family. We are back with another great edition of Building Rapport. Joining me is a very special guest. He's joined me before, straight from the Daily Wire, Crain Co. Jake Crain joins me. Jake, thanks for joining me, man. Let's jump right in, dude. Auburn had a bye week.
Yep.
And they have played 5 games. Give me your assessment of Hugh Freeze's first 5 games on the Plains. How is he doing? Are they on track to accomplish the things that he's setting out to do? What do you feel about these first 5 games for Hugh Freeze?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, Mike. Love coming on and chopping up with you guys. Y'all do a really good job. Look, I think he's doing I think Auburn's fine. I think they're on the right path. It's kind of been chalk about what a lot of people thought through this 5-game stretch. You had the tough one at A&M that you dropped, and then obviously Georgia. We know how talented they are, and you put up a hell of a fight. I think the things that I was looking for and some positives that I've seen is Auburn. They're not committing a ton of penalties. They're playing clean. You're not seeing a lot of miscommunication on the sideline. The flow of information seems to be really free. Look, with the talent deficiencies that this Auburn team has, and that's not saying that Auburn doesn't have any good players. Auburn has some very high quality players, and I thought Coach Freeze and them did a really good job in the portal. We'll see with Payton Thorne down the road how much that pays off. But when you look at it from a totality, right, from a on the field standpoint, they're out there fighting their guts out. They're doing everything they can. You can tell they want to play for the coaching staff, which is huge. They want to play for Auburn. There's no quit in them. We've seen adversity hit them. They've battled back from it. We'll see how they do against LSU. I know we're going to get into that. But then you look at the recruiting front and what Auburn's doing. There's a lot of momentum there, a lot more than there's been in Auburn in a long time. You look at the alignment of the fan base behind the team and the coaching staff. And I've said this since, Auburn started getting that momentum going in recruiting during the offseason, and it seemed like the players and the staff were gelling. When Auburn is aligned, Auburn is unbelievably dangerous. And you're gonna have to get through the choppy water to get to the smooth water. I say you got to be able to see the beach through the forest. Auburn's gonna have to take their lumps a little bit this year. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be critical sometimes, right? It's dissent is good. The coaching staff isn't perfect. The players aren't perfect, right? That's for Georgia, for example. You basically had to pitch a perfect game on both ends to win it, from a personnel standpoint on the field and from a play calling standpoint from the coaching staff. That's almost impossible to do. Having to be able to do that with no margin for error is very tough. But when you look at the direction that Auburn's going, and you can feel that momentum as an Auburn fan, right? We felt it when it was bad, when it was fractured, when we felt like, we weren't going in the right direction. But it doesn't feel like that right now. Now, you may get upset after a loss, and you should. I always say the standard at Auburn, losing should never be acceptable, but reality should. And where reality has us right now is that you're building, right? You look to your left, you got a giant in Georgia. You look to your right, you still got a monster in Nick Saban in Alabama. We know what LSU is capable of under Brian Kelly. Texas and Oklahoma are coming in, so it was a must that Auburn got the right guy to point them in the right direction so Auburn can compete at the level that the fans, the team, the administration, and the donors expect them to. And I feel like Auburn's on that right track. So it's going about how I thought it would be. I had them at 3-2 through this point, and it's not going to get easier. I can promise you that. But this team is going to be where it needs to be eventually, as long as they continue to let Coach Freeze and his staff do what they do.
Jake, a lot of the conversation at Auburn, especially offensively, is centered around quarterback. When Auburn has been able to find a serviceable quarterback, it's been championship time. Go back to 2004 when it clicked for Jason Campbell, undefeated. They got Cam, national championship. Nick Marshall, they came really, really close. Jarrett Stidham, they were 1 game away from the playoff. They brought in Payton Thorne. Right now, Payton Thorne is on pace to throw for fewer yards than Robbie Ashford did in 9 starts last season. I know you said that you feel like they're headed the right direction, but I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Do you think Auburn missed on Payton Thorne, or is this production more a product of the system? How do you see what's happening at quarterback?
I think we got to kind of look at some circumstances, right? Because everything is circumstantial. Auburn right now is recruiting that quarterback for the future. You look at a guy like Walker White. So what happens if you bring in a guy that may be able to stay at Auburn for 3 years or 4 years from the transfer portal? Do you still get Walker White? Now, once Auburn gets cranking to where they will be, I think those two things can exist if they want to go to the portal, and Auburn is
Sure.
that attractive and has won and shown the ability to do the things I think they're going to do under Hugh Freeze. But if we're just talking about Payton Thorne's performance so far, of what I thought that Auburn was going to get with Payton Thorne, I do think he's been disappointing. But not just because of the lack of pass yards. I look at on the road, and that's what worries me about this game. You go out to Cal, okay, which that's not an SEC team. That's not SEC speed, and he struggles. You go to Texas A&M, tough place to play, very tough place to play. And like I said on many of the shows I went on after that week, I thought he turned it down. I was shocked that we weren't talking about, physical mistakes. It was him kind of collapsing in the pocket, not even getting to the check down. I mean, I still don't think he's thrown a ball away. Then you look at the way he plays at home. It's a lot different, Payton Thorne, than you get on the road. So I thought Auburn was going to get a guy that could come in and may not have the strongest arm, but he could put the ball where it needed to be consistently. And I'll say this, against Georgia, he put the ball where it needed to be consistently, and the Auburn receivers did not come through. Was Payton Thorne perfect? No. But I thought the wide receivers, and sometimes the DB makes a great play. Like the one with Malcolm Johnson, that's a great play by the DB. Sometimes you got to just tip your cap. So that's how it is in every sport. But there are some plays that you have to make, and you have to make those plays in big moments. And I thought Payton Thorne put some balls in some spots where the Auburn receivers have to help him out. But overall, I expected more from Payton Thorne. If anything, mentally being able to hang in there and do the things that an experienced quarterback that played in the Big Ten. This isn't a freshman that came out of nowhere. This isn't like the kid from UTEP on Wednesday night that had taken 14 snaps in his college career and was making his first start on the road. This is a seasoned player. This is a coach's son. And look, there's plenty of time. There's plenty of big games. He goes down to LSU and lights the world on fire. You can change a lot of minds. So I'm not saying that he just can't, and Auburn got a terrible quarterback, but I don't think he's played, I think we can honestly say this, as well as what his ability is and that his experience has shown.
By the numbers, Jake, Payton Thorne is about a 60 to 62% completion percentage guy. I'm going to spit some numbers at you really quickly. So he averaged about 30 attempts a game at Michigan State in that 11-2 season, and also in the following, I think it was 5-7 campaign. They didn't make a bowl game that year, but obviously they had some issues going on there. He was widely believed to have had great receivers. Keon Coleman was there with him. He had some dudes at receiver. But the yardage floor was a lot higher because, quite honestly, there were way more attempts. How do you explain Auburn just not letting him throw the ball more? Because he's right around 60-something%, but he's on pace for about 1,100 to 1,200 yards of regression over what his floor was at Michigan State. Are they just not throwing the ball enough, or what's going on here?
Well, I think that's a product of what's around him and what's working. I mean, what's been the best weapon that Auburn has had offensively? It's been the run game. Even when teams knew they were going to run it, they've had success. And when you don't have a ton of depth on defense as well, you want to be able to give them some rest on the sideline. So I think it's a combination of things. It's never really one thing. And you look at Auburn's wide receiver room. Auburn really doesn't have an elite guy at wide receiver. The best pass catcher they have is Rivaldo Fairweather. I think Jay Fair is going to end up being nice. I expected more out of Javarius Johnson, but Auburn does not have depth in that wide receiver room. I mean, Hooks really hasn't, lived up to the billing. We saw one-handed catches during practice and all this other stuff. Camden Brown's on the back of a milk carton. I mean, nobody knows where that guy is. And it just seems like Auburn right now, when you look at what's working and you have to dance with the one that brought you, Payton Thorne and Auburn's best weapon has been the run game and Payton Thorne's legs, and you try and use that to throw off of to put what's a deficient wide receiver room. And look, Payton Thorne, there's been open wide receivers that Payton Thorne's missed, right? This isn't a one person, let's blame this one person. It's a totality thing. But I think Hugh Freeze and the staff is leaning on the strength of the team. And right now, if you go out there and throw the ball 30 or 35 times with a deficient wide receiver room, and that's not your strength, and you leave 20, 25 runs out there that you didn't play because you wanted to make sure you threw it enough, is that really putting the offense and a thin defense in the best position? So I think it's a mixture of those things.
Yeah, I would like to see these receivers get a few more opportunities. I mean, on average, these guys are maybe getting like 3 attempts a game, right? To catch balls. We talk about the quarterback getting into a flow, but the receivers, how do the receivers get into a flow if you're just simply not getting the ball's thrown at you. And then when you are getting balls thrown at you, they're in critical situations. It's 3rd and long, or it's, some deep throw that you absolutely have to make that play. And then fans freak out when that low percentage throw is not caught. I'll be interested to see if Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery can scheme up something that plays more to Auburn's strengths. But that's what I wanted to ask you next. Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery. Hugh Freeze has openly said that he's struggling a little bit with not calling plays.
Yeah.
It seems like there may be a little bit of a tug of war between those two on what to do. We've had reports of going into the week with one game plan, changing that game plan midweek. Given how it's looking offensively, if you're Hugh Freeze, what do you do here? Do you let go of the reins completely, or do you imprint your ideology onto this offense to make sure that it goes right?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. I do want to touch on one thing that we just talked about, though. I think one way that Auburn could you try to help that by getting the receivers in the rhythm is through quick game, right? Like bubble screens, spitting it out on now screens. But the Auburn receivers have to block. Like that's been a big problem when they've tried to spit it out there. The Auburn receivers just aren't blocking well. And if you can't do that, you might as well hand the ball to Jarquez Hunter and let those 5 offensive linemen, or you get 11 personnel, let those 5 offensive linemen in that tight end block and see if that you can spring you. So we'll see if they do more of that. But I want to put this, what you just said, in a real world perspective, right? I want you to think about this if it applied to somebody that wasn't a football coach, because it's very, very hard when you have built yourself up all the way from, the lowest point in your career when you started out to being the head coach at Ole Miss, right? By calling plays. You were the play caller. That is the best thing you brought. That's your flaming sword if you're Optimus Prime, right? That's your bow and arrow if you're Legolas. And all of a sudden, right, that happens at Ole Miss. Okay, it goes down at Ole Miss. You wonder if you're ever going to get to coach again. You get a job at Liberty. You're coaching the plays. Hey, it works out. It works out so well that you get an opportunity to coach at an even better place than you got let go of before. So now when you get what's going to be maybe your last big opportunity, are you willing to take away your superpower and not do that when your butt's on the line? Think about it. If you were a salesman and you were the best, you had built yourself up as a salesman. You were the best at going in the living room. I don't care if you're selling globes or insurance, and you could just sell. And you built yourself up to where you're the top salesman, that all of a sudden you get hired by this big company to manage a bunch of salesmen, right? And you don't get to go make any sales anymore, but you're expected to hit a certain amount of sales that, if you were selling stuff, you would really help get to that number, and your butt's on the line. Would you not be able to go out there and sell it? So I like to put this in a real world perspective, because we saw this with Gus Malzahn. This is his superpower. You're asking Superman not to fly. You're asking Batman not to be rich and nuts. Like it's hard to let that go, especially when this may be your last shot. So if it's me, it's like Sark, he's calling the plays. Right? Like some of these guys, it's like, I don't care if I'm the head coach, if I'm the OC, I am calling the plays, because it is, it's my ass on the line. If it doesn't work and my superpower doesn't work, I can sleep at night, man. But imagine getting fired and not knowing if it would have gone different if you were the one that was in control of it.
Yeah, it's always an interesting conversation, particularly at Auburn, when the last 3 head coaches have been offensive guys, and then when you have offensive struggles, very frustrating for fans. Hugh Freeze touted 2 things when he came in. He said, I develop quarterbacks and I turn programs around quickly. So I think, again, if you can demonstrate those things are headed the right direction after year 1, you're going to get a lot of grace from this fan base.
I will say too, Mike, there's a quarterback in an old place where Hugh Freeze was, that every time I turn on the TV, and I know it's not playing against maybe the greatest competition in the world, but Caden's got a little witch in him. I don't know anything. Nobody's told me anything. I'm not saying that Caden Salter's going to Auburn, but I tell you what, every time I turn on the TV and I see him doing what he does, the Spidey senses really start tingling. Imagine this guy in a familiar offense. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
It'll be interesting to see. I think that you brought up an interesting point about bringing in guys who have eligibility and how that affects your current recruiting. So, do you get Walker White if you're bringing in guys who have experience and eligibility? It's going to be interesting to see what tactic they take. Ultimately, when you are a top tier program, it's not something you worry about. Like Kirby and Saban aren't worried
For
about
sure.
backing guys at quarterback. They're like, we're Alabama, we're Georgia.
Yeah.
You come here and you play, and
Well, I
you'll
mean,
get your
are you
shots
bringing in
good.
a guy to be a mercenary while Walker White? Well, that's tough to say. Walker White red shirts. That's it. Say
Right.
that one 8 times fast. So,
But kids don't want a red shirt these days.
no, they don't. But sometimes, though, in specific cases, like you look at Arch Manning, you look at some of these other guys, they understand, typically because they have good counsel around them. Look, redshirting is one of the best things that can happen to you. It's one of the best things that can happen to you.
It's a lost art. Great conversation, Jake. I want to end today's discussion talking about the rest of Auburn's schedule. Auburn had a bye week the first week in October. They face LSU on Saturday in Death Valley, but they also have both Mississippi schools at home. And then the November slate consists of Vanderbilt, Arkansas, New Mexico State, and, of course, the Iron Bowl. How do you project the last 7 games of Auburn's schedule, and what does Hugh Freeze need to do here to make sure that he produces something that he can continue to sell to recruits to say we are headed the right direction?
Well, the first thing, if you can take care of business at home, I mean, that's a quality win over Ole Miss if you can get it. And then the Iron Bowl, I mean, I don't have to sit here and explain to y'all how huge that would be. Right now, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet it'd probably be 7-5. Right? You think they would finish, 4-3? Let's say you hold serve at home between Ole Miss and Mississippi State. You beat New Mexico State and you beat Vanderbilt. That gets you to 7. So now the question becomes, can you steal one out of LSU on the road, Arkansas on the road, which we'll see with Arkansas. It seems that place is falling apart more by the day, and they got to go to Bama this week, which isn't exactly a morale, spirit-raising situation. And then you get the Iron Bowl. So if you can steal one of those, I predicted Auburn to go 8-4 before the year. You get to that number, which would be massive. Would be absolutely massive. Now, I'm not assuming the Ole Miss game is going to be a win. I think Auburn's better than Mississippi State is. I obviously think Auburn's better than Vanderbilt is. I think Auburn's better than New Mexico State, even though I got a ton of respect for Jerry Kittle. But if you're able to hold serve at home between those 3 games I mentioned and steal one of, at LSU, going to be tough. At Arkansas, going to be tough. Against Bama at home, Iron Bowl, first-year starting quarterback at Bama, maybe figured out some things. But for Hugh Freeze, health, right? Auburn's got to catch breaks. They don't have enough depth. You always got to catch breaks. But when you don't have a ton of depth, you have to catch breaks. That's kind of where Auburn is.
It's going to be interesting to see. I agree with you. I think that Auburn is a better team than Mississippi State. They are at Will Rogers, man. He has fallen off without Mike.
Well, I mean, their offensive line, Mike. I mean, their offensive line they can't even pick up a twist, man. Like, that's the part that shocked me the most.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's going to take Zach time, but I mean, you can't pick up simple stunts. I mean, and Will hasn't been great, but it's weird to watch because Woody Marks is a hell of a player at running back. They got a few cats want to run around at wide receiver, but defensively, I thought they'd be better too under Zach, even though it's technically really his first year. That surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're projecting the rest of the schedule, I think the wins would be New Mexico State, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, right? So that gets you to a bowl game. Now, can you pull off what would be widely viewed as an upset between LSU, Ole Miss and Alabama, and maybe Arkansas, right? Like, which one of those games do you think Auburn is most likely to win? LSU, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Alabama?
Well, it's easy to say Ole Miss because it's at home. Not that that's going to be an easy game. That one's going to be tough. I'm looking at that Arkansas game, and Auburn always plays at Arkansas. They always give them a heck of a fight, right? Like, we've seen crazy things happen in that series. I feel like that's a team where we'll have to see how KJ and them progress. KJ has a pattern of getting beat up, especially toward the end of the year, even under the Stan Enos offense. They obviously are, they're a one-trick pony with him and Rocket Sanders. It's a hell of a trick, but they're a one-trick pony. I would say probably give me Ole Miss at home. That's the one I feel like, the Mississippi schools, that they struggle in Jordan-Hare a little bit. And Hugh Freeze being from Ole Miss, I think that's going to be a very emotional game. I think Auburn's going to get up to play it. Deep down, I still don't trust Jackson Dart. I just don't. But I tell you what, I picked Auburn to win the Iron Bowl, Mike, and I'm sticking with that.
All right. Well, I know Hugh Freeze probably likes that prediction. They've got some work to do if they're going to make that manifest. I want to thank Jake Crain for joining me here on the War Report. This building report segment is always fun. Jake, before you go, tell the people where they can find you and hear your stuff.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I mean, you thought lately I was Kim Jong-un, man. But no, just it's easy. Go to YouTube, CRAINN Company. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We go live each weekday morning, 6:30 to 8 a.m. Central. We talk a ton of Auburn, ton of college football, NFL. We have live call-ins and a live chat. It's a lot of fun. If you like talking ball, having a good time, I think you'll enjoy it.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of Building Rapport. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every single social media platform. TW Rapport on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.